In 1996, we finally got a brand new episode of Doctor Who. For the first time, it was a co-production with American TV, so it had the biggest budget of any Doctor Who episode before or since. And visually, it is still very impressive, but sadly the script leaves a lot to be desired. Still, it gave Sylvester McCoy a good send-off, and it allowed Paul McGann's Doctor to keep the show alive in books, audios and comics until the show finally came back for good 9 years later. The opening scene seems deliberately designed to put off new viewers, so much for getting a new American audience. It's just crammed with lore from the series, with Time Lords, Gallifrey, the Master, Daleks and Skaro all introduced at once, which is just crazy and seems completely unnecessary. Even the long-term fans would still be confused, wondering why the Daleks put the Master on trial instead of just exterminating him, not to mention why he is now a body-hopping snake. As far as I know, none of this has been explained in any of the spin-off media, and probably never will be. After this, we get Sylvester McCoy back for the final time as the 7th Doctor. At the end of his life, after all the New Adventures novels and the audios with Hex. It doesn't say or do much, but at least he gets to have a proper ending, and his presence does a lot to make it feel like a proper episode of Doctor Who. The new TARDIS set is by far the best thing about the movie. It's absolutely magnificent, like a Gothic cathedral full of candles and clocks everywhere, and all kinds of nooks and crannies filled with bits and bobs like an antique shop. It's probably one of my favourite TARDIS sets, including the ones in the new series. In fact, the whole look of the production is more glossy and polished than ever before. Even the new series episodes don't look anywhere near as good as this until at least 2010. All of the location scenes are packed with extras, there's chases through busy traffic, pitch gun battles. The production value is just way higher than anything the BBC could manage in the 20th century, and probably for most of the 21st century as well, to be honest. McCoy's death scene is very dramatic, gunned down as soon as he steps out of the TARDIS. It would have been quite shocking at the time, as it's much more grittily realistic than anything we've seen in Doctor Who before. And it establishes straight away that this is not aimed at children in any way, which was probably a mistake, as the new series managed to include children in the audience and was much more successful. Next we meet Daphne Ashbrook as Grace, the closest thing to a companion that the new Doctor gets. She's actually a strong character, fun and quirky, but a skilled surgeon, at least when she's operating on humans, and principled as well, quitting her job when her boss wants to sweep the Doctor's death under the carpet. A love of opera allows them to show her running through the corridors in an elaborate dress to the sounds of an aria, which is somehow very effective. The regeneration scene is also a highlight, with Frankenstein playing in the background and lightning flashing as the Doctor's face morphs into Paul McGann. It's a lot more subtle than the explosion-filled light show that the regenerations became later, although the Morgue Doctor fainting is a bit over the top. We also get another beautiful scene with the Doctor's face reflected in shards of broken mirror before he steals someone's clothes, much as the 3rd Doctor did before and the 11th Doctor would later, and apparently he now looks like Wild Bill Hickok, although nobody in Deadwood ever looked remotely like that. The Doctor is amnesiac for a good portion of the movie and spends most of it just hanging out with Grace. It's hard to see how his character would have developed from here. There is the usual name-dropping of historical figures, but he also has a seemingly omniscient knowledge of people's futures, which may or may not have continued. His kiss with Grace feels more like a life-affirming expression of happiness rather than anything romantic. It may have been controversial at the time, but the next few Doctors would do much more than that, with Madame de Pompadour and River Song among others. So now it just feels like the first in a long line of clinches. He does mention being half human, which is probably a remnant of one of the earlier scripts, where they explore the Doctor's parentage, but it's never been mentioned since, so you can probably assume it was just a joke. While all this has been going on, the Master, in the form of a dodgy CGI snake, takes over the body of Bruce the paramedic, played by Eric Roberts. He gives a bizarre performance, going from steely Terminator lookalike to over-the-top campness, sometimes in the same scene. He's not one of my favourite Masters. He's probably not even in my top 10. Julia was clearly the talented one in that family. His companion is Chang Li, played by Yi Ji So, who is a potentially interesting character as a morally dubious street kid, but he never really gets enough focus, and it's unclear if he was intended to be a recurring character if they made it into a series. The Master's big plan is to open the Eye of Harmony, which is in the TARDIS for reasons, and he needs a human to unlock it for other reasons. Once he's done this, the Doctor has to save the world by stealing an atomic clock. This is essentially the entire plot of the movie. We do get a good action scene as the Doctor and Grace race through Vancouver on a police motorbike. It's straight out of any American TV movie, but it's an effective change of pace all the same, so I don't mind it. And there were similar vehicle chases throughout the John Pertwee era, so you could say it's a callback. Eventually it all comes down to the four regulars in the TARDIS, making the most of the beautiful set, but losing the connection to the wider world. McGann finally starts to feel like a doctor here, talking Lee into going against the Master, and also encouraging Grace to operate the TARDIS and save the world by doing whatever it is that she does. The Master kills Grace and Lee, but the Doctor fights him until he ends up in the Eye of Harmony. Possibly this indicates he would have been a more physical Doctor like John Pertwee. It's hard to tell from just the one episode. He brings Grace and Lee back to life, somehow. I guess it's something to do with the Eye of Harmony being open and the TARDIS being in a temporal orbit, whatever that is. So you can put it down to just being a unique situation and not something the Doctor can do whenever he likes. At the end, it seems like they've been setting up a new TARDIS team, but the Doctor drops off Grace and Lee and goes off by himself. I assume they wanted a clean ending in case they didn't make it into a series, which they didn't, but it still seems a bit of a waste. Grace is left with no job or boyfriend, and Lee is stuck in a city full of gangsters who want to kill him. Both would have been much better off if they stayed on the TARDIS. And this was the last we see of McGann's Doctor for many years. The ratings were good in the UK, but not in the US, so no further episodes were made. I don't even remember the first time I saw this. I did own the VHS release, so maybe it was from that. I was never a fan though, and it put me off Doctor Who for many years, until the classic series started coming out on DVD, and then the new series started, and I became a fan again. But more on that in the coming weeks. The Blu-ray has 2 discs worth of extras, more than 3 hours worth. I suspect some of them were carried over from the original DVD release. The main one is the 7-Year Hitch, a documentary about the many attempts to bring the show back after it finished in '89. We hear from various BBC executives, including Alan Yentob, and Philip Seagal basically takes the credit for single-handedly spending 7 years trying to bring Doctor Who back in one form or another. We hear about failed projects like The Dark Dimension and the movie that never happened, and all the negotiations between the BBC and Amblin before the TV movie ever happened. We hear about some of the other actors who were considered for the role of the Doctor, and how the BBC didn't want to bring McCoy back. So there's a lot of interesting details in there. Sadly, this is all we get as far as retrospective documentaries go. There isn't the usual one where they bring back all the cast and crew, like you come to expect from DVDs, but maybe they'll do one of those if this ever comes out as one of the Blu-ray collection releases. The Doctor Strange Love is another one of those quirky features, where 3 fans talk about what they love about Doctor Who episodes that are widely hated by the fans. They're all very enthusiastic and they make some good points about how the movie set the scene for the new series that eventually followed. There's even more extras on disc 2, which is really a DVD. It looks like they just carried over the bonus disc from the original DVD release. We get to see Paul McGann's original audition for the role. We're using the original script where the Doctor and Master were brothers. It's a terrible script, but McGann is instantly charismatic, so you can see why he got the part. We also get some visual effects tests with CGI Daleks, 5 minutes of behind-the-scenes clips from filming, 15 minutes of cast interviews, including Sylvester McCoy explaining what Doctor Who is to American audiences. Philip Seagal gives a tour of the TARDIS set, pointing out all sorts of background details that I never noticed before, including a piano and a chess set. Who Peter looks at all Doctor Who's appearances on Blue Peter between 1989 and 2009. Apparently they did a whole special episode in 1999, which is crazy. Most of the target audience wouldn't have been alive when Doctor Who was last on. Russell T Davies talks about the links between the shows. We see Eccleston's appearance from back when he was announced as the new Doctor. And there's interviews with the winners of the competitions, like the kid who created the Absorbaloff and the little boys from Utopia. The Wilderness Years is a look at all the Doctor Who spin-off media put out between 1989 and 2005. It includes looks at the Virgin New Adventures, the Doctor Who magazine comics, the videos from Real Time and BBV, as well as the transition from Virgin to BBC books, and how the Berry Summerfield range launched Big Finish. So it's a really interesting look at a period of the show that doesn't get that much attention nowadays. Strips for Action is a whole separate documentary about the 8th Doctor comics, interviewing people like Scott Gray, Alan Barnes and Clayton Hickman as well as various writers and artists. I'm not familiar with this one at all, but it looks like a good run of comics, so I'll have to get around to reading it someday. Finally, tomorrow's Times has Nicholas Courtney introducing press clippings ranging from the announcement to the broadcast of the TV movie, and most of it was quite positive. There are also 2 commentary tracks. There's one from the director, Jeffrey Sachs, who basically explains how they filmed each scene. It's a bit dry, but very informative. Another has Nicholas Briggs with Sylvester McCoy and Paul McGann. Obviously, Nick Briggs had nothing to do with the movie, but he has worked with McCoy and McGann for years, and he basically interviews them about their time making the movie. And McCoy seems to have better memories of it than McGann for some reason. But it's a very entertaining listen all the same. Overall, it looks fantastic, and Paul McGann is a very promising Doctor, but the story is virtually non-existent until the overcomplicated ending. In hindsight, it's a fascinating midpoint between the 2 eras of the show, but it's hard to see how it would have carried on beyond this. I'll give it 3 out of 10. Next week, I'll be going through the rest of the Wilderness Years to bridge the gap between this and Rose. If you're enjoying my videos, then don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.